Hi everybody. Here we are again. It's Sunday night. And you can tell that it's just about June because there's still light in the sky. As I look out the window, it's still light-ish. Not super light, but there is still light in the sky. And my living room smells of the spring flowers of lilacs and lilies of the valley and some other things that came from Ezra's yard to fill my house with the beautiful smells of spring. It's been a crazy couple of days. If you aren't aware, my friend Carrie and I, and Mead, my friends Carrie and Mead, and I recorded a story last night. We went live last night with a pretty epic story. It was a 2-hour almost telling between all of us about Carrie's house down in Howell. And so tonight, instead of telling a new story, I want to direct you toward that story and just add a few things to it. Some of the things that we found and discovered after all. So I hope that this isn't too disappointing, because it's like you're going to have to now, if you didn't see the one that was posted last night, for all of this to make sense, you probably should watch that one and then come back to this at another time. But before we do that, it seems almost, I don't know, it feels kind of funny to be here in the dark in a candle talking about scary things when so many scary things are going on in the world around us. And we're seeing a real shift in things. We're seeing a shift on so many levels, and each of us just has to stay aware and pay attention and be ready to participate in the change and participate in all the changes that are coming. So last night we talked about Carrie's house in Howell that was built in the 1870s on a development that was developed on what used to be a cemetery. And in the story, Carrie talked about some of the things that happened there and who haunted it, and then how we dealt with a grief eater that was attached to the ground, to the land, attached to the property itself. So you really have to listen to the story that I reported last night. But after we did that, we actually did move the elemental, move the grief eater to the active cemetery, to the current cemetery. And things have been very calm at that property and in that area since. But right afterwards, a week later, after the adventure, first of all, right afterwards, we all felt like our bodies, my shoulders ached. I felt like it was 4 blocks, literally. It was a 4-block walk, and it took us an hour. And our bodies, all of our bodies, not just mine, I get that mine might be a little sore, but all of us felt really sore and muscle tired, as if we had walked for 20 miles instead of 4 blocks. That's how it felt. And we decided to get together, I believe it was 1 week later, for like a debriefing, because all of the things that happened were so weird. And when we were driving on the way home, when we were driving, we had a 2.5-hour, 3-hour drive back home after this, and talking about it, we were still like, so did that really happen? Did you? And we talked about all the things that had happened that day, and just making sure that we weren't making it up in our own heads. But we all did experience that and feel that. So we decided to get together for like a debriefing at Ruth Ann's house about a week later. And while we were in Howell and doing moving the the entity, there were people that were at home and each had a role of sending us energy and sending us, illuminating so that we could be seen, and to, just to keep us in mind, like their own candles, and be part of the ritual from afar. So all of those got together at Ruth Ann's house. Ruth Ann was one, and Jerelyn was one. And then I believe we asked Maria all the way on the West Coast to do it too, and others to just keep us in mind as we did this thing that none of us had ever done before. And we had no idea if it, A, would work, and B, would be a very dangerous thing for us to do, psychically dangerous thing, or physically dangerous. So we all got together at Ruth Ann's a week later, and although Mead and Layla were not part of the ritual, they were there as well. And we were going around and talking about our experience, and what happened leading up to it, and what happened during it. And Carrie was sitting in a chair in the corner, and Jerelyn was directly across the room from her. And it was a overstuffed, one of those, it was a soft upholstered chair, that kind of swivel rocker kind of thing. And Carrie was sitting in this chair. She was not leaning back or anything. And she said something, and Jerelyn turned to her and said something, and all of a sudden Carrie went flying backwards in the chair, like Jerelyn just pushed some kind of energy and knocked her over in the chair. And we talked about kind of chuckled about that, and I don't know. So last night at the story, I did say if anybody had any questions or anything about what happened, if there is somebody who listened already last night and has any questions, if you want to go ahead and type that in the comments, I would be glad to answer any questions. I think we'll stick with that kind of thing. I'm not doing a whole new story tonight, just kind of answering and adding on to last night's story. I see that Carrie is chiming in. Carrie, would you be willing to post some of Mead's drawings in the comments on this, right now on this feed? Because one of the things that really struck me, that got me thinking we have to go there and do something soon, was feeling like Mead especially was starting to be targeted. And this did not sit well with me at all. This was something that I was not going to allow happen. And I as part of it, that I don't think I said last night, but I dreamed that the thing had come up from the basement, and that it was actually harassing and endangering the children, and Mead especially. And I looked at some of my notes today, and because I take notes on these things that I do to keep them straight in my head, and I looked at not for the story, but like when it happened. I keep a journal of my experiences. And I saw that in one of my messages, I asked if it had been bothering the children, and I didn't say that I dreamed it. I just said I heard a rumbling in the back stairwell, and I felt like it was aiming at the children. And then that's when Carrie sent me some drawings that Mead had done. Mead is a really gifted artist, and if she's watching, you're really amazing. You do some amazing artwork. But this was a few years ago, and I don't know, Carrie, can you throw those in there so that, throw one of those pictures in if you can. And can you put a picture in a comment in a live video? I don't know. Anyway, so some of those pictures will be up. I also spoke about using Vigil candles, and the difference between the Vigil candle when I was in the Women's March, made in the same batch, and the Vigil candle that I used a night that Carrie had to kick the thing out and seal up her house on her own. And so I posted that in comments on last night's story, I believe. And I'll also post them in comments after this one, too. She says she's trying to post the pictures. I don't know if you can post pictures in comments in a live feed or not. But is there anybody who saw the story that has any questions at all about it? I know this isn't the usual spooky night. So if you want the usual spooky night, what you should do, if you did not already watch the one that I posted last night, go ahead and do that. She's posting them on the page. She says she doesn't think she can post during a live feed. Yeah, I was thinking that. So you can go to the Spooky Ms. T.I.'s Ghost Stories with Spooky Ms. T.I. page, and you'll see some of those photos of those drawings. Shelly says, I thought it was really interesting that you could see the grief eater entity in the black slots going past the window. Yeah, black dots going past the window. It was odd. I knew, at first I thought that there was like somebody on a really fast car that sped by, because the first window I saw it in was directly in front of me. And you know, when a car moves by really fast and you don't register it until it's almost past, and so that's what I thought. And then I looked out towards to my left where you could see out the front windows, and I saw it fly by there. And then the other windows, and I was sort of tracking it, and it was like a line. It was a slick, as if, how do I describe it? It was this inky black, elongated line, like something was moving really fast, and it just passed the window, and then seconds later it was in the front, and it was like encircling the house. And at that moment, I knew that what was outside was not a safe thing. A safe thing to the family. I felt like it was something. It had everything to do with the grief in the house, the depression in the house, and the oppression is what I call it in the house. That it came from that. At first, when I first realized that Sarah Preston had been sitting in that corner and that's where she lost her child, I thought that perhaps the depression was in connection with her, and that Carrie's husband was feeling her feelings. But over time I realized it was not her. It was this thing that was coming up through the window and feeding on his grief and making it greater, so that, you know, just to be able to nourish itself. Let's see. Kaylee says, was your most intense and or scary encounter with a grief eater? Was this my most intense or scary encounter with a grief eater? Sounded super intense. It was the longest. It was extremely intense. And I think with a grief eater, it was my most intense experience with a grief eater, but it was not my scariest. I felt a respect for the danger that it could put us in, but it wasn't scary. It was not startling. I didn't feel afraid. I felt that the only way to approach it was with kindness and with love and with just like with any ghost. But this is a person who is in panicking. You know, in my 1,000 years teaching, I've seen children that are, you know, children of trauma, that have experienced trauma, and when they slip into that panic mode, that fight or flight mode, you you can't be afraid of their rage or their anger or their volatility. You have to match it with as much calm and peacefulness. And that's why I think Ezra's contribution and his brilliant suggestion, this was his idea, to be the smoker and be like the beekeeper to calm things down. The scariest elemental, the scariest not human entity that I have ever dealt with and experienced, and never really, I mean, not dealt with but experienced, was not this one, was another one. And I think next week I'll tell about that one. Yeah, and that was the one from the lodge that was probably the one that was most scary, because it was also like one of my first aware encounters with a non-human entity. Let's see, I have some more here. This is more of a general question. I get visits from loved ones that have passed on from time to time. Seymour. Feed me, Seymour. Pass on from time to time. I'm okay with this, and part of me wishes I would get more of them, but I also don't want to open myself up to things that could be malicious. What things could I do to protect myself while making sure those that have a positive message can come to me? That is a question I get all the time. And that's a really good question, because not everything that walks down the street is our friend. And so not every spirit that comes to us is our friend. But, you know, if you're experiencing your loved one, somebody else asked me this and how it was so scary. That was like, you know, don't scare me. And I said, well, instead of saying don't scare me, saying, what do you want? And if you just ask, what do you want? If it's something, you're going to know if it's your loved one, I think, or an imposter. Sammy, have you had things come through other than your loved ones that you feel like you've been threatened by in any way? Can you comment about that? Something that I do, because I have things coming in all the time, and like even when I'm trying to sleep, poor Layla, I mean, she lives in the room next to mine upstairs, and she's like, Amma, there's something walking in the hall again. I'm like, oh, okay, you know. But it's because there are spirits that just come to seek my help, or just come because it's like, oh, here's somebody that will hear me or see me or whatever. And I create this, so like if there's a time that I don't want to deal with any of them at all, I create this bubble around myself, and I visualize it as an actual bubble, and I use my own energy. And if you could feel your energy, if you rub your hands together and then close your eyes, you'll be able to feel your hands before you touch them. And if you practice this and keep trying to feel it further and further apart away, you can start pushing your energy out so that it goes beyond your own body. And so within that bubble, I can feel like nothing can penetrate that bubble, and I feel safe in that. The other thing that you can do is to, you know, all of us have, I think, our own angels and ancestors, our own things on the other side that are associated with us, our grandma, you know, the ones who come visit you. Ask them to protect you and keep anything else away. I've had folks tell me that there's something that's scaring them in their house, and I'm like, well, tell your grandma to stand with you here. You know, call on her right now and say, hey, there's something scary in this house with me. Can you stand guard tonight so I can sleep? And guess what? They will. They will. Let's see. Go back to Sammy's. Did that answer your question, Sammy? Let's do a thumbs up if it did. Carrie says, Kaylee, most of the time while it was here, it was just a general feeling of sadness. There were a few moments of terror, but usually it just felt sad and heavy. Yeah, because that's the nature of that kind of entity. There are different kinds of entities that do different kinds of things, unfortunately, for some people that have to deal with them. Yeah, this one, that's one of the ways that I really figured out what its modus operandi was, that it was a grief eater. Here's a question. You spoke of a plant in the beginning. Oh, Carrie said it was her grandfather. I was wondering what you called it and what it is the meaning of it. What I did is I wanted a plant there because plants will change the energy in an area. That place, I felt like whatever was coming in and eating the sadness in that corner that energy needed to be broken up. And so I pictured a plant there, and I just, for some reason, I asked, I said a plant, a really good plant here would be like a mother-in-law's tongue, and I can't remember the scientific name for that right now, and Carrie said, I have one, and that was the plant that had been that her father had taken home from his mother's funeral, and her grandmother had passed away before she was even born, so the plant was older than she was, and something just told me to ask for that plant, and then when she brought it in, it was clear that it was attached to someone who was one of her protectors, and that's when she told us about that it was her grandmother's, a plant from her grandmother's funeral. Yeah, wasn't it great having Carrie here to tell her own part too? I mean, you know, I can go on and on forever, but it's so nice to have people tell their own stories. Okay, Sammy says, definitely no, it's my loved ones. I haven't had anything threatening come through yet, though. You probably won't, Sammy. There's, you know, the movies make it look like there are demons and evil things out there that are going to get us at every turn, but that has not been my experience. I've had, like in the house in Chicago, in that apartment in Chicago, where I believe that whatever that entity was, this thing that moved around Carrie's house moved like that, like Black Mercury. That's how it was moving, but much faster. But I think that the fear, every time you're afraid, you know, that extreme emotion stays. It's like it's energy, and you put out this energy that can actually ball up and turn into visceral things. What is it? I think I heard something like a tulpa or something. I don't know enough about ghost jargon. I just tell about my own experiences, but where your own energy and your own emotion creates a kind of entity. But I don't think there are nasty things out there just lying in wait to hurt us and take us away. I think the things closest to us are the ones who love us. That's been my experience, or the ones who need us in some way. Now, there have been, I have seen things where there's someone that is known to the person who passes away, and they continue to haunt them in a way that's not pleasant, and for their own selfish reasons that are not, they're not there to help the living person. But those people weren't there to help the living person when they were alive either. And in a couple of cases where I've come and run into that, I have expelled those spirits and told them to go away, and sent them away. As far as I know, I never heard back from those folks that they were back. So I definitely know it's my loved ones have anything good. I worry that something eventually will come through. Don't worry about it. Seriously, I know that sounds easy for me to say, but like I just said, there's The chances of that are very slim. And Sammy, if you ever feel that, you send me a message day or night, and I'm on the case. All right. I've been envisioning this giant white light in my core, and then surround myself, then my surroundings. This is perfect. You see, you already know what to do. Then push it out. See, you already know what to do. That's amazing. Dan's watching. Carrie. Do you bring holy water to the haunted places that you go? I do, but I don't bring holy water that was blessed by a priest at a church. I bring holy water that I bless myself. I know that may sound arrogant, but everything I bring with me, I put my own intention in, because I feel that having those tools that have my own intention in them helps give me the confidence to deal with what is there. And for me, holy water blessed by a stranger, that isn't that mindful, it's just words said over water, is not as effective for me as when I do my own. And I use, I don't use tap water. I use water from the spring or from the river, and then I don't bless it like in the name of the Father, Son, I just put my hands on it and say, I bless this water, and ask this element to be put to good use for the good of all, for the good of everyone, and concentrate and, put my own energy and feel my energy from my hands into it. And then I will take that. And I only do that just before I'm going to go. I don't keep like a bottle of holy water. I keep jars of spring water, so that I can do that if I need it. Good question, Zach. Crystal, Carrie, thank you. What is the reasoning of why she asked you for it? What was the question? I'm not sure, Crystal. What is the reasoning of why she asked you for it? Why, who asked you for what? I don't know. Maybe you can answer that, Carrie. A reason of why I asked for the pictures. That's what you're talking about. I'll post a picture of the plant in the corner. Notice that we had moved the chair out of the corner. Good thinking. Carrie has the drawings, and they were drawings that Mead did that really, she was like, I don't know how old, maybe 12, maybe 13, if that, and drew exactly what I was seeing. So when I saw her drawings, it was like, oh, okay, this is right. Oh, Carrie says she already answered it. Good, thanks. There she is. Where did you post it? Oh, I can't wait to look at the pictures. I can't look at the pictures while I do this. This might be too personal. But have you ever seen Tommy or any contact? Yes and yes. He's been not too far, and his words have come through. He's been with Rachel in very scary moments that she had. Bunsey and I were sitting here, or I was in the living room, and we have a couch in the dining room right under the big window by the bird feeder, and he was sitting there where the light was better for reading, and I was sitting in this spot in my chair. And he comes and he says, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "What?" He said, "They were just knocking." And I said, "Knocking? What knocking?" And I hadn't heard it. I don't know what I was doing. He said, "I just heard knocking in the house." And I said, "Well, where? In a room or upstairs?" And then all of a sudden we heard these three knocks, dum, 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 on like an interior wall somewhere. And all the hairs on my body stood up. And I was like, "Tommy, is that you?" And it went boom, boom, boom again. And we both looked at each other and smiled, and we said, "We love you. We love you. We're glad you're here." I've seen him in dreams. his words, like I say, have come through, which have been very comforting to me. I see my mother a lot. I feel my mother a whole lot. I feel like she's really close to me all the time. I have not seen hide nor hair of my father. The joke in the family is that he's probably still in purgatory. That is a joke, but it's not a fair joke. But so I haven't experienced him, but my mother and my brother, yes, absolutely. Let's see. Oh, you post on the main page. 45-year-old plant. Holy cow, that plant is older than my teaching career. He's watching Shelly. You felt elementals in the forest. Have you ever felt elementals in, oh yes, in the water? Shelly asks if I've ever felt elementals in the water. Absolutely. Yes, the river and the spring itself. Definitely. And they're very recently at Lake Michigan when the full moon rose, and we went over, it was in a month or so ago, and we went to the lookout over Arcadia, just north of Arcadia. There's a place where it's this huge bluff looking out over Lake Michigan, and it was for the sunset and the moonrise, and it was when the full moon was rising, and it was a very powerful full moon. It was a very important full moon in terms of awakenings and change. At least that was my perception. And when we got there, the lake, I'd been working a mirror on my altar with things, and the lake was like glass. The entire lake felt like a mirror. I mean, it reflected the sunset exactly. And Lake Michigan, even when it's calm, there's still lapping of waves because it's just such a huge body of water that it undulates, and it's alive, it moves. And this lake, from this high bluff, I climbed up and down 110 stairs. Yes, thank you very much. And watching the sunset and then watching over the bluff behind me for the moon to rise on the surface of the water. As the moon rose, I could sense the lake itself, like the lake elemental, the spirit of the lake, sort of rising up. The sun was setting, and I just felt this shift as the moon started catching the light, and it felt alive. And so I think that might have been the lake, as the lake itself houses an elemental. Let's see. Is it a shadow person or spirit? Neither. Zach asks if the grief eater was a shadow person or a spirit, and it was neither. A shadow person I think, from what I've heard stories, sometimes it is a non-human, like jinn or something like that. Sometimes ghosts appear in shadow. Having formerly been human spirits appear as shadows. I think the prototype, the stereotype of the hat man and the trench coat, I think that things are appearing, and then our minds, just like that pareidolia where we see faces in things where there aren't really faces. See faces in the clouds, like the twins driving home from school when they're particularly squirrely. Our joke is to say, look in the clouds and see if you can find Butsy's head. They look for Butsy's head in the clouds. It's funny. But I think because a trench coat and a fedora hat is not something that an ancient spirit or ghost would be dressed in. Even 200 years ago, that would not be recognizable clothing. So I think what happens is that we sense that there's something there, and then we see it, we turn our brain on, and our brain perceives it in that way, in what we see. That's my take on it. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. I may be wrong. That's just my thinking on it. And I'm sure there are other people who have their ideas, but that's my idea of it. Elementals are entities that are attached to or part of the natural world. The earth, the forest, the lakes, the rivers, things that were never human. Spirits you can have spirits that are never human, but an elemental is something that is much bigger and much more a part of the earth itself. It's not something separate. It's not something that dwells on the earth or on the water or in the woods. It is the earth and the water and the woods and the river. So that's the best I can explain it. I hope that helped. Let me go back and see what other questions we have. This is fun. I hope you like this. Kelly says, I'm not exactly sure how to word this, but what has been the most vibrant, positive energy spot you've ever been? Has it been a place, or has it been with people, or both? Ooh, that is a good one, Kelly. The most vibrant, positive energy spot I've been. There are places that do that for me. Lake Michigan is one, and a few places in Lake Michigan. Lake Superior. But there are, I think, moments and people that are more, I think probably the most vibrant, positive energy spot I've ever been was in the little room in Nashville as Leela Mae was being born. And being there, watching, being part of, and watching the birth of Leela Mae on St. John's Eve. That she was a little late, a little overdue. Everybody was thinking she's coming at the solstice, and she waited for St. John's Eve. And those of you that heard my story about my gramps know that St. John's Eve is a powerful, powerful night. And there was this something in that space. And at that moment, I was able to communicate with Rachel without even speaking and be able to give her, our energy kind of, without touching her, our energy connected as little Leela came forth. And I have never experienced more vibrant energy than that. And even in the births of my own children, and even in Virgil's birth and Layla's, I was there for all of their births, and there was something, the air was charged, the moment, the place, everything. It was also, she was born in the water, so there was that, and it was just, yeah, that was it, Callie. That was probably the spot, and it's not a spot I can go back to except in my mind. And I can remember, when you experience something like that, your brain keeps it, and you can connect to that. So there have been other times that have done that for me, that have gotten me through some really difficult moments, when I trigger those memories in order to feel that positive energy. What a good question. Wow. And this is from Lex. If I wanted to connect with my grandpa, is there a way I could do that on my own? Or should I consult with someone who has gifts similar to me? I would first try to do it on your own. And yes, you can. What I would recommend is, if you know how he feels, you remember him, you can just, you know how you feel with him and how he felt with you. And what I've told folks that are dealing with grief like this is, there's this place between asleep and awake. And as you're lying in bed and ready to fall asleep, where you start to just kind of, you're not yet dozing, but your body is really still and your brain is still and your breathing is slowed down. At that moment, pull him into your head, into your brain, and ask him to come. And ask him, don't say come, just ask him to come in your dreams. And that has helped a lot of folks. You can also, of course, see somebody that might be able to help you talking to your relatives that have already passed on, your dead people you love. You have to be really wary about that. There are folks who make their living with that, and I think that if I was doing that, if people were coming to me and paying me to connect with their loved ones, I would feel a lot of pressure to deliver, whether or not I was actually, whether or not it was actually real or accurate. So be careful about that if you're going to do that. But start with yourself. You have a greater connection than, like, if we were sitting in the same room and you asked me, you're the one who makes a connection, not me. So try that just before sleep and see if he can come in your dreams. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they sometimes they're not right there, but give it a go. She can absolutely do it on her own. Yep. Yes, Carrie is right. You can do it. You saw Fedora Man when you were 5. Yeah, a lot of people see that. It's really interesting. And like I say, I think it's a form of pareidolia. It's like you picture, because the look of it, was it taller than a normal person and in shadow, and just, it was, I think there's a school of thought that those are actually jinn, and look up the jinn, DJIN or DJJIN, depending on where you're looking, and see what they are. It's kind of interesting. I think there are a lot of scary things that happen with people that are actually these parallel creatures that live amongst us. Would I feel comfortable recommending helpful books on hoodoo? No, not right now. Not here. Judy, private message me and I'll set you on your path. One of the things that there are a lot of traditions that deal with local root work and herbology and magic and medicine. And what I would really recommend is to look at what your ancestors were doing. Wherever you came from, if your family's Scandinavian, find out what their culture was. One is not more powerful than the other. The only power in any of this is the connection that you have to it. So just to look at, putting together herbs or doing candle work or whatever isn't the whole tamale, you know what I mean? So I would recommend looking into your own culture and finding out what's there first. And if you message me, I can give you some that give you like an overview of what it's like. Let's see, Carrie. I'm posting T.I.'s drawing of James. Oh, you still have that? Whoa, yay, I can't wait to see that again. I don't even remember what it looked like. I can't wait to check all this stuff out. Anybody have any other questions or anything? Jerelyn's on. Jerelyn, I briefly told about you knocking Carrie out of her chair with the power of your mind. Jerelyn, when she was there, she had a fella out west that she was connected with who was like her spiritual advisor kind of thing. And while we were Ruth Ann's house. And by the way, Ruth Ann's house was her grandmother's house, and was jerelyn's grandmother's house. And the chair Carrie was sitting in had been in the house and was jerelyn's grandmother's, was a chair that was in jerelyn's grandmother's house. So there were all these connections. But while we were there, she was getting all kinds of messages from this guy who was her spiritual advisor that was warning her about stuff and saying, what's going on? And this is right after she pushed Carrie down. Sorry. So, yeah, we all have, everybody has, everybody who was there at the ritual has their own story. And this is something that, like yesterday, Carrie and I, when we collaborated to tell the story, we talked about collaborating to write it and getting the stories from the others as well. Oh, right, yeah. Carrie says right after she flipped my chair, her phone rang, and it was this guy. And he's like, what's going on? So we're connected with a lot of things in a lot of places. Mm-hmm. Carrie, what were Mead's words? She said something really wise there just before we closed the conversation. Is there any symbology in a hunched over kneeling ghost? Depends on where it is that you see that. That's okay. You don't ask questions about the story. Ask questions about anything. This is a Q&A. So, Shelly, where did you see the hunched over kneeling ghost? And are you sure it was a ghost? In one of the drawings? Oh, is that where you're seeing it, Shelly? In one of the drawings? Oh, you saw one in the woods by a creek in a big pond. Well, it could have been a number of things. I don't know about symbolism with ghosts. I'm sure there are some, but for me, I just, when I'm there, I kind of get it from them. What are they trying to tell me? There's no generic symbolism for a kneeled over, hunched over ghost by river or pond. Maybe it's somebody that fell in, I don't know, or was fishing. I'm not sure. So I can't answer that question. Sorry. Does salt have any effect on keeping bad things from crossing? That is not a myth. That is true. And salt and red brick. And when I talked in the story about just X's on the foundation, I also drew lines of red brick. One of the things that you carve, you scrape the red brick so it leaves a line, a mark, and a line at each of the doors. And that keeps evil out. Now, just the line itself doesn't, but when you place the line, you put your intention there and you create the seal. Salt is a very, very powerful seal. I have no idea why. Again, it's with the intention of using it as a seal. But salt is used in pretty much every culture I've ever, as a purifier, as a protection. In every culture I have learned about, I've never learned of a culture that did not use salt in that way, as a really sacred element from the earth. I mean, something that we need, and it's a very powerful protection. Era talks about being in Italy and in a place. Maybe we'll be able to do a night sometime. We're telling that story where there was nothing in the cupboards except a bunch of boxes of sea salt, and that night when it got dark, she realized why. Let's see. No myth, it's true. Her daughter saw it in the woods and looked at her with dark eyes. May just have been, I don't know. It may have been a ghost. It may have been a wood spirit of some kind. I can't tell you. I can't answer that question, having not experienced it myself. We were kind of wrapping up, and she spoke. She said, I think we need to do some sealing ceremony or something like that. She wanted to have closure together. Yes, and that was so wise. This is, we're talking about Mead, about Carrie's daughter Mead, that we needed to, we had left, we just got back to the house, we buried our candles by the maple tree, I believe, or by a pine tree. We buried our candles in the yard somewhere. And then we got in the car and drove away. And then when we met the next week, we were still kind of shell-shocked. We felt the physical effects for days. When we got back together, there was still, things hadn't closed. And so the energy was flying around. And Ezra had told us about seeing the dark thing behind Nancy that was not the grief eater, that was something else. And I was thinking this is the elemental that I'm going to talk about next week, and thought that maybe we needed to do something with that one. And I was like, no, we're not going to get it. So, and then Mead said, we need to close this, and we did. And so we did a little ritual closing of everything, and then everything just felt right, and it just put it to right. So it was a really smart suggestion. I was just thinking about that. We were kind of wrapping up. Spoken and said, okay. Hi, Rach. What's the purpose of red brick in the form of 3 X's? It's a petition it's actually a voodoo practice, and it's like a petition prayer, and what you do is you repeat it. You draw the X. It's like, instead of a cross, an X is a protection, and so you say it, your intention, and you draw the X, and you repeat it, and you repeat it the 3rd time, and that creates the seal. So it's an appeal to protectors to protect, or to, like if you have a tree, where you want to, it's something you see, like if you ever go to New Orleans and you go in the cemeteries on what folks think is Marie Laveau was the voodoo queen of New Orleans. On her tomb, there are a whole bunch of 3 red X's, and you put those in, and it's like a prayer. It's asking for something, a prayer, but it's also a protection. And red brick, I'm not sure why, but red brick is a really commonly used protection powder. As a matter of fact, I know people who keep like a jar of red brick that is like ground up. It's the not hard fired red brick, not like the red brick of my fireplace. It's soft fired red brick that you can, that you could scrape off and you could draw with if you cut a piece. That's powdered up and kept in a container in the house to keep anything with ill intention from coming through, and we'll use it to sprinkle in their stoop. Remember me telling you about my grandpa clearing off the stoop? You put some red brick on your stoop, and it's like the antidote for any bad juju that people leave for you. Let's see, purpose of red brick X's. Thanks so much for sharing the story of Rachel and lovely Leela on her birthday day. It was one of my favorite days ever, and it's coming up. Oh, and I'm not going to be with them, but I will be with them. I'm bummed that I'm just now tuning in. Oh, well, you could listen, Steph. What we're doing is answering questions, and Stephanie just came in. Stephanie was a big part of the story that was told last night, and she's a amazing witch. I suppose that's the best way to put it. She's just a very, very, very in tune spirit person, and her energy was critical there, and has been in many situations. So, Steph, people are asking questions either about the story that Carrie and I told last night about Piety Hill, or any questions at all about any of the stories or that I've told, or anything at all to do with ghosts and spirit stuff. It was a pine tree that had been planted when the house was built. That's right. Yeah. But you can also watch it later. Okay, good, Carrie, you're so awesome. What part do you think dreams play? I dream that I'm working on the farm with my dad at least twice a week. And I literally feel like we were there busy for hours. He's been gone for 20 years. That's the easiest way to connect, is in our dreams, because there are no distractions. You're in your head. You're in your spirit space. I also sometimes, people that dream they're flying. I think we do. I think it's possible to leave our physical self when we're sleeping and be in other places with people who are no longer in their physical self. So I'm sure if you feel that way and you dream about that, that's real. That's an experience that you are actually experiencing. And don't you feel like it's something you've experienced after you've dreamt that? Well, you say that right there. But you literally feel like you were busy for hours. Yeah, you were. You were together. That's his way of connecting with you. A lot of times, people right after folks die, they're upset because they're not dreaming about them at all, and not feeling them there near them at all. And I think that right after we die, most of us are figuring it out. It's a whole new language. It's a whole new, it's something that none of us have experienced yet. Well, remember experiencing yet. And so there's a whole lot of figuring things out right after we die. And for people, I think, who have suffered before death, I think there's a lot of gleeful flitting about and running fast down roads and things. So sometimes it just takes time. Plus, at the same time, when we're grieving and really deeply in grief, it's harder to connect to our loved ones because all we feel is the grief and the missing of them. And once that kind of works its way into our deeper selves, and it's not so much, it's like the wound that heals that leaves the scar, but when it's bleeding, it's hard to connect. And so I think that's why it's after time that people have more experiences with their immediate, like right after people die. That happens a whole lot, coming to say goodbye and the visit and the chicken a la king can falling and things like that. But what I've seen is that sometimes it takes time to have them to actually connect. Okay, let's see. Dreams. Ghostbusters. Oh, that's right. That's right. So after Carrie and Meade left Ruth Ann's house, they drove back to Howell, and on the highway they passed a thing that said the Ghostbuster mobile. I mean, oh good, you posted that picture too, good. So they passed the Ghostbusters on their way home. Yeah, Ghostbusters, so different from the line. I'm not sure what that comment is, Crystal. So different from the line. So different from the line. What is that question pertaining to? It's like so different from the line. Clay. Yeah, Shelly says the red brick the X's are different from the line. Yes. The line is just a barrier, like where you'd pour salt. Now I get your question. The delay between, reading the comments and what I'm saying. And the X's are an intention. So the line is a barrier, like a line of salt, and the X's are and I use X's with sealing oil as well, with protection oils, and X's with blessing oils and things like that. The X, and when I do the X, I take the oil and I put it on the middle finger of my right hand, and I will do the X's with that. I don't know why, and I don't know if that is like, it's just something that I feel like that's how I'm supposed to do it. A lot of what I do, a lot of what I started to do, I was doing just intuitively. And then I found books that helped direct me toward making my own concoctions and my own oils and things. And I found that a lot of the things that I was doing just intuitively was actually stuff that probably came from my cellular memory or something, or my ancestors were telling me. Love you too, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing these stories. An area I'm very interested in is paranormal. That's cool, Zach. There's so much. It's so interesting. It's a whole another aspect of life that if all we were and had was just what's here, just the physical stuff, it'd be fine. I mean, it's nice. You get hugs. We get to drink wine. We get to sing and play. But for me, when I think that we share this place with so much else, it just adds levels of richness for me that some people would say I delude myself with. But for me, it's how I enrich my life. And you learn about that stuff more. There's some great podcasts too. Zach, Al, did I feel the spirits when I visited the Toast and Jam? Yes, absolutely I did. I think, did I say something to you about that, Al, when we were there? I think I did, or I said, I mentioned it to somebody, especially in that little parlor off the side there, off of where the bathroom was. I was sitting in there when, I think Virgil was, or it was before Virgil, I think it was there when we were there with Sally and Claudia. And I just felt like there was somebody that would walk toward the kitchen, toward the pantry door to the kitchen there, back there. Yeah, I would love to hear your stories from that place. I wish there was a way we could all share our... What if people I don't know, what if... let me think about this. Maybe there's a way more of us can share stories. Wouldn't that be fun to put our own videos on here with our stories? Hi, Anju. Did I notice this gift as a child? I didn't realize that it was a gift, but I've been aware of the spirit world since my earliest memories. So, but I didn't realize that everybody else didn't have that as well. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized that everybody else couldn't see that stuff too. Because remember, I grew up in a haunted house and my siblings all saw this stuff too. Oh, we could share a Zoom, Carrie says. Oh, let's think about that. We'll figure something out, some way to share our stories. So all the people around me also saw the things I was seeing, so I did not think of it as anything different. And then when I was 13 and I got sick, that's about the age that people start, you get, life's too busy and you start forgetting all this stuff. And, young children, I think, all are in tune with the spirit world. And, but forget or stop paying attention to it because, they're often told, there's nothing there. Or, here, pay attention to this, when they're off looking outside the classroom door and then saying the black man walked by, pay attention to your school, So people start losing that. But when I got sick and everybody else was able to go run and play and I couldn't, I started to explore that ability in myself to move freely without my body, which kept me really connected to the spirit world. So I think I just have continued to use it and hone it my whole life instead of letting go of it like most people do. Let's see. If I had any experience encounter engaging with spirits of animals, pets, or wild... Oh, yes. We still, sense solace around. Yeah, I have. I haven't, we have not had a ton of pets here. And that's so. The only one I can say is well, the other dogs, but they were other people's dogs, and but we heard, well, after Rosie died, we could hear her little claws going tick, 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 across the floor for a while. And Sal, every once in a while, he would stand and kind of lean on you and stuff, like he was trying to sit in your lap. And you can every once in a while feel him there, and definitely feel his energy. And the twins say that he's there all the time, that they feel him there all the time next door. Your ex always said that he felt a ghost cat rubbing up against his leg when he was in the house. Yeah, that happens. It happens a lot. I've heard it more than I've experienced it, but I'm not surprised. I mean, of course, if you're really connected to a person and they pass, that connection remains. The threads remain. If you're really connected to a creature, an animal, I think that same thing remains. Yeah, so I'd say yes. Anything else? What have we got? Oh, but wow, it's already been an hour. I was only going to do this for a really short time tonight. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask? Should we call it a night? And the one, if you didn't tune in last night, I know it was like on spur of the moment. I think I gave you like a 15-minute notice, and then we went live. Poor Carrie, she came out of the bathroom and she's got the poison ivy, and oh man, and I'm like, okay, we're ready to go. She says, no. I'm like, yeah, just do it now. But so anyway, are we good to go for tonight, you think, folks? Any last questions? I'll just wait a minute and sip my glass of wine here. Good. Can't wait for next Sunday. Have a great week. Thank you. I will, I think next week I'm going to talk about the lodge and about that elemental that was just the most powerful thing I've ever felt in my life. So that'll be it. I got the keys to the house 7 years ago today. Wow. You have too many questions for one night, Shelly. Well, wouldn't it be fun? I know that a lot of us live far apart or something, but anytime, if you have any questions, you can also message me, just send me a Facebook message, and I will try to answer any questions that you have or help you in any way that I can. I'm glad to be able to do what I can for folks. It's hard, when this stuff is so scary for so many people. Like Ezra says, it's like bees. It's scary to most people. You're out there and you see a swarm of bees, and for most people it's like a swarm of bees, and it's dangerous for some people if you have a bee allergy. Yikes, But I remember having a bee swarm in our driveway once, and Ezra coming home from work, and before he even suited up, with his bare hands, he saw where they were going, and he was gently scooped them into the super, and then he suited up to finish with the swarm. But for him, it wasn't scary at all. And so he's the beekeeper, and I feel like a gatekeeper, and I'm not afraid of it. So I know these things can be really scary because, when you think that there's something there that you can't actually see, touch, taste, whatever, it can be really scary. But it's all part of the natural world we have. Let's see, any more questions? Just too many questions. Next weekend, extra spooky. Oh yeah, the lodge. You're welcome, Shelly, and you're all welcome, and I appreciate you all listening and letting me share this stuff. This is a part of me that's really important, and it's something that only very few people have known. And so this going public with all this, with the stories and with my book and all that, was a real leap, because there's but it's a risk I'm willing to take. Okay. Good night, my friends. Instead of shaking hands, we say namaste. Namaste. And I'll see you next week, and listen to the story from last night if you haven't yet. And peace out. Have a great night.